everyone, and welcome back to another video of Genshin with Daka. Today, we're going to be talking about whether you should summon for Ayaka's Constellations or not. Because I know that Ayaka is an extremely hyped up character and a really loved character by the community, so I want to talk to you today about whether or not you should summon for her Constellations or save your Primo Gems. Let's get started. So, the first constellation, and I'm most likely going to pronounce this wrong, is called Sosai Sumizome Sakura. And basically what it says is when Kamisato Ayaka's normal attacks deal cryo damage to opponents, it has a 50% chance of decreasing the cooldown of Kamisato Art Hoyuka by 0.3 seconds. This effect can occur once every 0.1 seconds. So, when does Ayaka do cryo damage with her normal attacks? Actually, she does cryo damage with her normal attacks after she's in her sprint mode, after she's been in her sprint mode. And basically, when she does a cryo normal attack, so she sprints, pops out of the ground, does a cryo normal attack, it's going to decrease the cooldown of her elemental skill by 0.3 seconds. And this is a very useful constellation because her elemental skill has pretty high scalings, but it is a 10-second cooldown, which is longer than most one-hit elemental skills. So this will be a very helpful constellation. It is also the first constellation, so it won't be as harder to get compared to other constellations. So this is an okay constellation, but not a very, very good one. Next, we have Mie Yuki no Seki no To. So, this constellation says, when casting Kamisato Art, Sumetsu unleashes 2 smaller additional Soken gates, each dealing 20% of the original storm damage. So, Kamisato Art Sumetsu is Ayaka's burst, which releases 1 big swirling cryo vortex. This second constellation will give 2 additional cryo vortexes, but they only do 20% of the original storm damage. Now, if this constellation was able to make all the storm blade gates deal the same amount of damage as the first one, then it would be a very, very good constellation. But because it's only 20% of the storm damage, it's not that great of a constellation, and doesn't even come close to the first constellation. The third constellation, Nanano Nishikie Kamifubuki, that's funny, increases the level of Kamisato Art Sumetsu by 3. So this increases her alt level by 3. And because her alt is an 80 energy cost, and because her alt has a very high scalings, and it's very powerful, this is definitely a good constellation. Constellation 4 set called Ikoyo Ruyahan says opponents damaged by Kamisato Art Sumetsu's Soken gates will have their defense decreased by 30% for 6 seconds. So basically, this says that when Ayaka does her burst and hits an enemy, it'll decrease the enemy's defense by 30% for 6 seconds. And this is a really, really good buff. So it is comparable to Constellation 3 and Constellation 1. Very good constellation. Constellation 5, Hanani Kumo Kaneni Irotsuki, increases the level of Kamisato Art Hayoka by 3. This will level up her elemental skill level by 3, which is also a pretty good thing because her elemental skill has high scaling. But it's still better to get C3 than C5 because the burst is much better skill than the elemental skill. Constellation 6, Ai Sugetsu, says when Kamisato's Ayaka's cryo damage scores crit hits, her damage is increased by 10% for 3 seconds. This effect can stack up to 5 times and can be triggered once every 0.1 seconds. So, if Ayaka does a crit hit 5 times, she will get a 50% bonus of damage. And this is a really, really good constellation. So, now let's talk about which constellations are worth summoning. Constellation 1 is a really good constellation and might not be bad to summon. Constellation 2 is not that great. Constellation 3 is superb. Constellation 4 is also superb. Constellation 5 is meh, sort of like Constellation 2, but Constellation 6 is amazing. It is absolutely wonderful. But, of course, it is Constellation 6, so what do you expect? You shouldn't wish for it unless you're a whale or have the money, but Constellation 1 or Constellation 3 might be a good constellation to go for. As you probably have noticed, most of these constellations focus on the elemental burst, which is really cool because her burst does a lot of damage. So this was the video about which constellation of Ayaka you should summon for. This is all leaks, so this may not be the confirmed official constellations of Ayaka. And thank you to Honey Impact for providing this information about Ayaka's constellations. So that's all I have for today's video. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day, and Genshin with Daka out.